Where was I? Finally got the video to upload. My signal's over there, my router, so I gotta use the Sky signal and it sucks. Is that Mr. Stanley Crud? Don't wave. Takes instructions really well, Mr. Crud. So I was saying that these vehicles have the electronics, and when they went to electronics in 94 and the Squarebodies in 87, they got computers under the floor that are susceptible to salt that drops in from the floor mats, and electronic ABS brakes, and it just makes these vehicles unrepairable because they're far too complex. You need far too many scanners. And yeah, there's guys like Rich Rebuilds that shows guys that put Tesla motors into Audis. I saw that one last year. This truck is relatively simple. It's got a really low-tech throttle body injection. And these trucks, I don't know if I mentioned it in the previous video, they ran till the end of production in 91. And they updated to the independent front suspension, and they got more complicated in 96, and they got more complicated in 2000, and they're just making them more complicated to meet emission standards, which really affects the poor people. Rich people just trade it in, bring it to the dealer, get ripped off, spend $2,000 to fix something that's when the vehicle's not even worth $2,000. Let me change gears, and enough ranting about the electronics. We all know the square bodies are beautiful, but go find a vehicle that's now 30 years old. I told you, get out of my video, Mr. Stanley Crud. You know, you could stay. It's a joke. It's a joke.
I gotta tell you about that photograph you sent me of that old Power Wagon.
Yeah, the guy died. It's in his backyard. Let me make the video.
That was the first Power Wagon I ever saw, right?
Uh-huh.
And I knew the guy who was a surveyor. That's the first one I ever got to ride in.
Yeah, and that thing's been sitting in his backyard for 30 or 40 years, under the nettles, under the stinging nettle. That thing is worse than patina. So, getting back to the way these vehicles work, they have been on the road for 30 years, or if you got an 81, 40 years. And what happens is, when they were a year or two old, the bushing here on the door striker breaks, falls off. So I wrap it with electric tape. Very difficult to do. But the hinge pins are also rinky-dink. They wear out. They're a chore to change properly. Then you have to do some minor door alignment. And then you have to take off the door panel and lubricate things with wool wax spray or fluid film or transmission oil or anything you want to spray in there. But you got to spray it in the right places, because you can spray until the cows come home. But if you don't spray things in the right places, oh God. Sound like Bill in Curious Cars. How can you rant about the weather in Florida? I love it there. I've been there so many times. I was there last month twice. I love it. Heat, 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 heat. Who cares? As long as the goats aren't walking on your cars. But what you have to do on these square bodies and many other vehicles like this, for instance, this Jeep Liberty. Gotta oil things. There we go. That's what we pay the big bucks for. You gotta oil things in the right places. And you gotta rust proof them, otherwise they rot away. So this one came from Florida. It's got a tiny bit of rot. It's got a little bit of a twisted fender. But let's stay on topic. It's not easy for me. I got a lot of things on my mind. So what happens here, let's put the camera in here upside down and put some light in here to give you a lot of door access. That door mechanism rots. It just gets full of rust from the grease drying out and the sun baking it and a little bit of water getting in and dripping down and salt. So when I press the button, you hear that? So you just can't give it a cursory spray of WD-40 or silicone or PV blaster or Croil, whatever you want. You got to use wool wax or fluid film. It's the best stuff. I've used them all. I have used them all. It's the best stuff. Wool wax or fluid film. They sell it at Lowe's or Home Depot. And you have to lubricate everything. And it takes me 15 minutes to get everything. The window mechanism, the track. Sometimes the track is corroded. Sometimes there's dried grease in the track. You just can't spray something and say, I did it, and now it doesn't work as well as Corvair Wild says, because Corvair Wild may be a magician, but he's not Mr. Perfect, which is what Mrs. XCW used to call me. You think you're Mr. Perfect? Oh, come on. So what happens is the door gets really creaky and hard to open, and people push their thumbs in, and then the mechanism can seize and lock up. And I've got a fellow now who's got a very similar 84 Suburban to my SF sub. His is a diesel as well, but it's a half-ton, and one of his doors locked shut, seized shut. So how do you get access to it when you can't roll the window down? Maybe you are. Sometimes windows break, the motors go bad, the wires. You can't get the door panel off because you have to mangle it because it's bigger than the opening that it has to pass through. He should have lubricated it before the situation happened, like I do. Speaking of rot, there's the rot on this truck. One spot, there's nothing else underneath. Nothing. It's beautiful underneath except for that one spot where some mud collected. Changing gears again. Why are these vehicles so good? Why are they so bad? When they get hit, when they get mangled, this is thick early 70s steel. They hadn't downsized or downgraded the thickness, the gauge of the steel, spelled G-A-U-G-E. So confusing. Should be G-A-G-E. I had a guy come over here yesterday. He's a body guy. And I said, listen, I want to sell this Suburban. I just bought it because I needed to tow back another GMT 400 over there. Can you fix this quarter panel? Can you unwrinkle this disaster? This is thick, real steel. This is half thick steel, and that's even thinner steel, and that's even thinner steel. This is the real deal steel. I gotta patent that, trademark it. He said, yeah, no problem. I can weld on a number of studs here, and we have a multi-stud puller that pulls a whole bunch at once. And I watched a guy on YouTube that put some brace here on the fender, then he pushed in from the back with these special tools. But those vehicles that we're repairing nowadays for the last 20, 25 years are made of soft, thin, easy to manipulate steel. Well, maybe it's not soft, it may be hardened or stress tested or who knows what. So I love these trucks, but I love the newer ones too because they're GM's finest. That one, unfortunately, is ready for the junkyard. And I drive, oh, the garage is closed. I drive a 2001 2500, but at 15 miles per gallon, 6 liter. I like driving this thing better, 36 miles per gallon. So this guy promised me that he would take this Suburban in. We're working on a deal for a bunch of complicated stuff. My life is never simple. And he said he can pull this, straighten it out, and then with minimal body filler, just like what Pisser did on my SF sub, which Mrs. XCW crashed soon after. Wouldn't mind if Pisser would paint the whole right side of that SF sub. It's sitting in dry storage. He also said he could fix this fender. And somebody mentioned that they remember when I got the SF sub, that was in August, September of 2007, I think. There's a video on it. I also have the mix match sub. I still have it. But I am probably going to be selling the property where the vehicle has been stored for the last 15 years, sinking into the mud. I pulled the tranny, sold the tranny years ago. The guy never installed it. I also had that two-tone blue one with the 6.2 also. It was an 87, but it had a Turbo 400, so I got rid of that one. With the tranny, and it's in Indiana, sitting in the mud. So I still have the mix match sub, but it's going, unfortunately, pretty soon with a broken crank. So what else can I tell you? I watched a Jay Leno video. I was watching a Jay Leno video a month or so ago, and he was talking about a 66 Cutlass L69, if I have my numbers correct. An L69 Cutlass, which was a 400, 360 horse tri-power. 1 year only, same as the tri-power they used in 57, 58. And Jay Leno said, yeah, the old 400, the good big blocks, same as the Nailhead Buick. Last year was 66. And I'm thinking, Jay, stick to the steam cars. A Buick Nailhead and an Olds 400 and a Chev 396 or later the 402 and a Cadillac 429, which became the 472 in 68, and a Pontiac 400, which all the Pontiac motors are all pretty much the same except in 62 when they integrated the crossover for the water jackets. And I know you're watching this Mr. 65 Grand Prix or Mr. Gojo 283. So I get called out on stuff when I make a mistake, and sometimes I do. To end this video, what do we got for time left? Another 2 minutes. To end this video, I was at a car show, Corvair show last week, and the last car that I saw in the line of cars that I walked through, the last car, I walked all the way down that line, and then I came back and there was 4 or 5 cars, and I talked to the guy that owns that last car in the video, and we had a very pleasurable conversation. It's a car that I wanted to buy 40 years ago. I drove to southern New Jersey and looked at a similar car. I'll give you a hint, one of 521 built. The car was junk. It was 14 years old and it was folding in the middle. The car was junk. Anyways, I got problems. I got too many cars. This thing's got to go. This thing, the motor needs to be pulled. Maybe I'll make a video of me putting a battery in and getting it running. I got to scrap this thing. This beater here is rotting away. This thing I love. My first Chrysler product. You can barely call it a Chrysler. It's really a K car with nicer lines. But they made 500 every year. and I prefer the one with the hideaway headlights. And it's got a 5-speed, and I got to vacuum the interior. I get 36 miles per gallon with this thing, going 60, 65 miles an hour. The air conditioning doesn't work, the hubcaps fly off. And I got a lot of cars, and a lot of maintenance, and a lot of things to do. And this body guy, if we make this deal, it's a complicated deal to put together, and we all got to cooperate, and I sure do. He said he would paint the roof and peel out all this seam sealer, and it's all rotted underneath, and we're going to find some surprise. He would paint the roof and just touch up the hood and the 62 Bel Air. And I got some other cars coming, and the sun's going down, and the tools are all sitting on the bench, and I got things to do, and my parts washer is leaking. How does a parts washer get rust on the bottom and leak? Is that it, Mr. Stanley Crud? Have I talked enough?
Yeah, I think so.
So I apologize to Mr. Tony, Uncle Tony's, and I'd like to meet. I was in Michigan last week. I wouldn't mind meeting Mr. Adam, that does rare classic cars. I enjoy his videos. He's very detail oriented on his full-size Fords, Chryslers, and GMs. I love them all. my loves, my interests are quite eclectic. And I guess that's enough for the video. So hope you enjoy it. I didn't run out of memory this time, even though just ran out of memory. See you later.